Hi and welcome to another carpenter tutoring tutorial. I'm Amy and my goal is to help you work smarter, not harder, as you are going through some of your factoring equation homework problems. So we have already talked about one situation where A equals 1. If you haven't seen that video, you may want to start there, so I'll leave a reference to it here. In that video, both of our magic numbers ended up being positive, which makes it really nice for us. But magic numbers don't always have to be positive. They could both be negative, or you could have mixed signs, one that's positive, one that's negative. We're going to take a look at what happens there today. All right, so we're going to start out with the equation x squared minus 3x minus 54 equals 0. Before we can jump into factoring, of course, we have to make sure our first and second steps are in a good place. So first, I have to make sure my equation is set equal to 0. It's already done for us, so we don't have to do any extra work here. I also have to make sure that I've removed any greatest common factors. As I look through, my coefficients of 1, -3, and -54 do not share any common factors, so that step is done. I also don't have any variables that I could remove from every term. So since I've double-checked steps 1 and 2, I know that I'm ready to go on to factoring. All right, now we have to consider our magic numbers, which should multiply to the same thing as A times C and add to the same thing as B. Now in this case, since we have subtraction in front of some of the terms of our equation, we have to treat that subtraction as a negative sign that travels with that value. So for example, because we have subtraction before B and subtraction before C in our original equation, when we use the values of B and C, we'll treat them as negative values, representing the impact of that subtraction. So that means my A value is still 1, but my C value is -54. And my B value is -3. All right, so we're looking for two numbers that multiply to -54 and add to -3. There are a couple things that we can tell from both the product and the sum of our magic numbers. The fact that our product is a negative number tells us that we have mixed signs for our magic numbers. We'll have one positive magic number and one negative magic number. That's because we only have two factors creating this product. And the only way that we can have two numbers multiply together and create a negative product is if one is positive and one is negative. So thanks to the product of W and Z, I know that I'm looking for one positive magic number and one negative magic number. Then the sign of B tells me the sign of the magic number that is further away from 0. That means as I'm considering my factor pairs, whichever factor is further away from 0 will share B's sign. In this case, B is negative. That tells us that the factor further from 0 is negative. All right, so we've got a lot of information already helping us out. Now we have to think about the factors of -54 that could potentially add together to -3. So I'm going to use a factor tree to think about this. That helps me keep things organized, but you can use any method that you'd like. So thinking about the factors of -54, where the factor further from 0 is negative, that means I can start with factors of 1 and 54. Since 54 is further from 0 than 1 is, I know that 54 should be the -1. 1 plus -54 takes me to -53, so I know these aren't my magic numbers, and I'll continue. I can also think about the factor pair of 2 and -27. When I add these together, I'll get an answer of negative 25, which is still way too big, so we need to keep going. Next, I can think about the factor pair of 3 and negative 18. When I add these together, things are still too large, so I have negative 15 instead of just the negative 3 that I'm looking for, so we have to keep going. 54 is not divisible by 4. It's also not divisible by 5, so I can move on to 6. 54 divided by 6 leaves me with 9, and that 9 should be negative because it's further from 0. When I add these two factors together, I get an answer of negative 3. So that tells me that these are my magic numbers, 6 and negative 9. So W and Z are 6 and negative 9. Now that I know my magic numbers, I'm able to set up my factors. As always, we're going to look at the first term of our original equation and look at the variable there. The square root of that variable becomes the first term of each factor. So we started with x squared. The square root of x squared is x, so I'll begin each factor with x. Then I use my magic numbers. The negative 9 already completes that factor because what was a negative on the 9 now becomes a minus for subtraction. And then because the 6 was positive, we need to use addition in front of it. Remember that this is all still equal to 0. So now we have a complete factored form of this equation. You can double check your work using the FOIL method. Also, if you'd like any help with creating a factor tree like we did with negative 54, I have a video on that as well, so please check it out. As always, thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. Hopefully this was helpful. If there are any other questions that you have or equations you'd like to see worked through, please leave a comment and I'll catch you next time.